All right, YouTube Repo Man 64. As you know, I've been working on this new timeline. The original timeline was based on figuring out the month and the day that all of these events took place. And I decided to tackle the 6,000 year millennium or the age of Earth as in regards to when the rapture might occur. And so I've been working through this for some time. I was up 2 nights ago till 5 in the morning, and Sister Sandy, as usual, built a timeline. Now, the timeline progression starts with me making a linear timeline from left to right. And then it progressed to 6 days you shall work, and 7 days you shall rest, I've showed that to you many times. This one is also linear, showing the 6,000 years. I'm not able to make the timeline where 6 years you shall work and on the seventh year you shall rest. I'm not able to make that. I can see it, but I can't make it. And so I believe that Sister Sandy is going to tackle that one on her own. I would be curious to see. As we learned when we made the 6 days you shall work and 7 day you rest, there are no events that take place on Friday and on Tuesday. However, all the other days, you know you're on a good timeline when everything lands where it's supposed to. The flood happened on October the 31st. 150 days later is March 30th, the day Jesus went to the cross, the day that the waters began to recede. You look back 14 days and you're at the head of the year on March 16th, March 17th. And so that's how you know you're on the right track is when the numbers land correctly. Again, said this many times over the last 30 years, I've tried to build timelines and they all fell apart because they just didn't match. So I've done it again with this one. I want to present it to you. If Sister Sandy can wrap her mind around 120 Jubilees, which is 6,000 years, if she can wrap her mind around that, that'd be very interesting to see if in we'll see something again where in the third year and in the sixth year, the same as in the third day and the sixth day, we see no events that you wouldn't see any events in the third year and the sixth year. Be curious to see. The reason I would see a problem with it is because the Jubilee stops during the period of time from when Jesus is born and from the time the dove settles down on him at his baptism. It appears as though the Jubilees, that period of time is set apart. Um, if it weren't, then we should have seen a rapture in 1997. That 1997 is exactly 4,000, 1996, 1997 is exactly 4,000, 6,000 years from creation, but we didn't see in a rapture in 1996. So do we have to go into the Bible to see what dates would show us as to why an event we thought should have happened didn't happen? It didn't happen in 2017 on the Revelation 12 sign. Why? It didn't happen every single date we've ever come up with. And there's no shortage of people telling me, stop giving dates. You're taking hope. I will not stop giving dates because it's driving somebody out there to their knees. And I've gotten plenty of comments saying your date made so much sense. I was so afraid that the Lord would return that I, in fact, went in and accepted him. While I'm disappointed that the date has passed, I'm thankful that the Lord has saved me based on not just me, but on all the other watchers that are trying to figure this out. And I saw a very good video of a watcher who said that God actually wants us to continue to set these dates because he did in the Bible. He gave us so much information that caused us to believe that these dates could have very well been the date of the rapture, that it did, in fact, drive people to their knees to accept the Lord. And that is ultimately the goal of this. Those who say, stop taking away hope, and this sounds cold, but I don't care. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I still have hope. I can't imagine. I would imagine the people that are saying that perhaps haven't fully accepted the Lord and looking forward to His return at every possible date, right? Every possible mathematical equation, every thing that we see happening out there in the world, out in the stars, here on Earth, earthquakes, volcanoes, war in Israel, all of these things are culminating right now, just like the Bible said it would. So, in that, I will present to you now why I think that, and I did this the other day, but I found something as I was going through the math. Something is going to, I don't want to say is because not thus saith the Lord, but it would appear as though on January 25th, something is going to transpire. What? I don't know. Rapture, maybe a huge event. But due to the math, doing the math, it looks like January 25th, here in 2025, something might happen. Now, while I was building the timeline, and we all make the same mistake, the timeline showed that there is a different timeline that's being applied to Israel. It's separate and different from ours. Every date that we see in the Bible and every time span we see in the Bible is not specifically talking to the rapture of the bride or the tribulation saints, a great multitude that we will see in seal 6. So, but this made itself apparent as I was building the timeline that Israel, in fact, has a separate timeline, and and this separate timeline is pointing to January 25th, which I'll show you here in a moment. Um, this separate timeline of January might mean that something's going to occur in January 25th in Israel, or the most terrible thing that could happen to Israel is if the I'd say bride. There's so many different people argue over terminology. When we say bride, we're talking about a pre seal opening event. This means we're standing there when the first seal is opened. This means that when we're gone, the restrainer, and again, we see a restrainer still in force in seal 6 because he's saying, hold back everything. I'm releasing these things, but hold back until we've sealed the 144,000. And then we see the 144,000 will be taken out of here mid-trib. We also see that the two witnesses will lie dead in the street, 3.5 days, 84 hours, mid-trib. We keep seeing this 84 jump up. Anna, Anna, I think it's Anna. 84 years, she was a widow. So we keep seeing this 84 jump up. Jesus, in fact, was in the grave for 84 hours, not 72. If it were 72, then you'd have to count what we already know, the 3 hours prior at 3 p.m. when he gave up the ghost. Those 3 hours would have to count towards the 72 and become 75. It's and then we know that he was rose just because it says that Mary went down there just before sunrise. So we would know that, when you add all this time in, 84 makes the most sense. So we see a lot of 84s that appear, and I found a huge one, which is what I'm going to point to. But I don't know, based on what I'm seeing in the math, if January the 25th of 2025 is speaking to us or to the Jew. But it's very apparent as I worked through this that there is a separate timeline to the Jews from, and get this, this is the what I call the bride, those who rule and reign with Christ, those that will be there before the first seal is opened. There's a difference between the bride, the tribulation saint that appear in seal 6, and again, the timeline shows that maybe it's 6 months. It might be 6 months to seal 6. And why do I say that? Is because by trumpet, and remember, seal 7 opens up the 7 trumpets. So this you can't I see these people trying to overlap trumpets and bowls with the seals. The seals go all the way through the 7 years. I'm sorry, but they don't. Seal 7 opens up the 7 trumpets, so they don't overlap. They're in succession. There's 21 of them, and they're in succession. So when we see in seal 7 that the 7 trumpets are opened by trumpet 3, we see Apophis, or we think it's Apophis. The Bible calls it wormwood. So it would almost appear that Apophis is wormwood, and from the math, that happens right dead in the center. I showed you that in the last video. David the Watchman had it. One of my commenters caught it and sent it to me, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I want to show everybody this math, but what I would love to see in the comments are people who say, "What about this? What about this? Add this." I did make a mistake on Abraham, which I fixed because a commenter said, no, Abraham was born in 1948, not 2005 BC, but 1948 BC. I was like, oh, you're right. I missed that. And so I fixed it. And I'll show that on the timeline. That's what I'm looking for I'm looking for people to say, no, this is wrong because of this, this, and this, so that I can either fix it or throw the timeline away. Again, been doing that for 30 years. Find me something that says it's wrong, and then and I encourage that right there. Not insults, of course. I'm not looking for that, but I would encourage people who have studied this stuff out to go in and say this absolutely will not work, or wait a minute, this makes a bunch of sense, but you got to add this, this, and this. So let me get into the pictures. Let me share first, so I don't forget to do that. Let me wait for the thing to go up here. It did. All right. Let me move me up and out of the way, and let me go into here. Again, this is where it all started. Sister Sandy built this, but I had built one in crayon. See crayon, but I had built one by myself, and then Sister Sandy painstakingly put this into a program, and I was able to, and this is how my brain works, I was able to see all of the events that took place and mathematically how they all fit. There is no other day we can start the year on aside from March the 17th. If you started anywhere else, then you have to shift everything down, and none of this stuff. And of course, the moon never will do this ever. The moon simply cannot do this ever. So, but that is a Hebrew thing, is the moons. So, I built this, and then it transpired into this. I don't recall how long ago it was, but Sister Sandy did it. 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day you rest. But creation began on a Sunday. 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day you shall rest. When I built out the timeline, things kept coming into me. I saw a lot of discussions on the internet that said that Eve was not created on the same day as Adam. Eve was created on the 6th day of time. Adam was created on the 6th day of creation. And when I put it on here, it fit. It was surprising to me. So we have 11 days of creation, 7 days of creation plus these 4 days, 11. It kind of blew my mind, 11. And so we have 8 over here, 9, 10, 11. I'm not saying that creation lasted 11 days. It was completed here. God rested. Adam started naming all the animals. God and Adam are in the garden together. Jesus is the creator. Jesus is in the garden with Adam. He's naming everything. And then he realizes it is not good for man to be alone. So over here on day 4 of time, which had been the first day of creation, he puts Adam to sleep. Somebody made a comment which confirmed my suspicion it confirmed my suspicion that Adam, in fact, was put to sleep for 3.5 days, as a foreshadowing of Jesus in the grave for 3.5 days. I believe that Adam was put to sleep on the 7th day of creation, the day God rested, the same day the ark rested on Mount Ararat. count one, count one, two, and three. I believe this is the day that Eve was created. And again, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I've seen so much internet chat about Eve being created a few days after Adam. And when I put it on here, it fit Tishri 6, day 6. It fit perfectly. And Adam being asleep for 3.5 days. At any rate, I digress. So I put all these dates and I notice that nothing happens on Friday except for Adam being created. Revelation 12 sign. We know when you go into Stellarium, look, the moon is actually under her feet at midnight in Israel, exactly at midnight. I mean, 23:59, the moon just slides under her feet. So the date that the Revelation 12 sign happened was Yom Kippur. That day is atonement. That's atonement. That is the day that Jesus ends this 40-day fast. That is the day that he takes his priesthood. That's the day, 5 days over here, 5 days before his birthday on Tabernacles on September the 29th at nightfall. So when we build this timeline, we say, I saw, and it bugged me. I saw, well, mankind was created here on a Friday, but nothing at all happens here on a Tuesday. And then I learned that Jesus turned water to wine on a Tuesday, 3 days after, but 2 days prior to his birthday, 3 days after atonement. He said, his mother, what is this? It's not my time yet, or something to that effect. He's still 2 days away from his 30th birthday when a priest can become a priest. A priest in the is it the Talmud is in their laws and regulations can't become a priest until they are 30 years old. In fact, the dove settled down on Jesus on this day, 40 days after his fast. So we come over here to Tuesday, and it looks like I'm not I'm not saying this is, God, thus saith the Lord, but it looks like that Eve is created on this day, and 1 week later, Jesus turns water to wine on this day. So I found that very impressive that that fell like that on the timeline. I showed you that many times. Like I said before, you're trying to stretch out the amount of time Jesus was here, but it's 33 and a half years. You can't stretch it out. You move this back to 6 BC, that means Jesus died in 27 AD. He was here 33 and a half years. I don't know of any historians that would disagree with that. As of late, there are people who are doing math trying to make the timeline fit to their understanding of when Jesus died. It had to be, it had to be, how you say, 2,000 years later. It does, but it's not because of this, and I'll show you here in a moment. But it is this. He was here 33 and a half years. So if you want to move this to 1 BC, then you can move this to 32 AD, and that might make some sense to you. I don't know. To me, it's 33 and a half years. It doesn't budge. I wanted to promote this guy's channel. He's brand new. I just found him. I don't spend a lot of time in Discord. I don't know if he's one of the people in Discord. I go in there into my room only. I don't really have time. I do a lot of studying and a lot of listening, trying to catch a piece of information, like the fact that Adam must have been asleep for 3.5 days for his surgery to create Eve. Thought that was extremely interesting, but that's the kind of stuff I'm listening for, to where it makes sense to put it on a timeline. Now, again, William Phillips, let me enlarge his name here. I keep forgetting that you guys can't see this. William Phillips, he has 9 subscribers, or he did when I watched this. I believe he's gone up to 18, but he's very good teacher. Again, all Christians are at a different walk in their, they're saved, but they're at a different place in their walk. Some are still grappling with the simplest of issues that I put to rest a long time ago, but I will not become impatient with those people who are still working on those issues because I worked on those issues 40 years ago. So I will not lose patience with those people. I also know that even if a Christian's been a Christian for 40 years, sometimes they don't grow whatsoever. They're still Christian. They're still going in this rapture, but they don't grow. They stay on milk the entire time. There's no sin in staying on milk. There is only rewards that are um, at risk. Then we have the Christian. Well, we have Christians that have been Christians for a week, and I've just been floored by the stuff they found. I'm like, how in the world? You've been a Christian for a week? How did you find all that stuff? And it kind of turns out that they had been studying for a long time, but they finally recognized, and scientists do this a lot, they finally recognized there's just no way, there's just no way that all of this exists by accident, that all of this had to have been created. They get down to the base molecules and say somebody still had to create the base molecule. It didn't just assemble itself into all the different living creatures we see. Something had to design that, and they recognize that God is, in fact, God, Jesus, the creator. Um, so then we have this Christian that we have these Christians, been a Christian for a long time. They're not on milk, they're on meat, but they're in their own department. This is my department. This is what I look at. I look at dates and times. I don't do a lot of biblical teaching. If you need biblical teaching, go to, and I do too. I need biblical teaching, but I don't teach deep biblical stuff. I look at times and dates. That's kind of my strength, what I do. But if you're an old Christian and you just need some, and I am an old Christian, but if you need to learn, go to these types of channels. This is good for brand new Christians on Moog. This is good for old Christians who thought they knew everything. You can learn something from somebody like this with 9 subscribers. So please go subscribe to his channel. In our walk, that is what we do. We will support each other, we will back each other, and we will recognize that we're not all the same. Some people, Steve Fletcher looks at world events and he does an amazing job. And there's others out there who dog him out for doing what he does. I would not take anything away from Steve Fletcher for doing it the way he does. That is what God has given him. He does some incredible math from date to date. I can't even fathom doing what he's done. And then you have these people that do gematria. Some say, well, that's from the devil. And I don't, that's their, they use these God put number values on letters and they add up to this and they add up to that. And I'm like, absolutely amazed. I see other people use all the calendars together and somehow come up to a date. And it's amazes me how close they are or dead accurate they are as to the dates that I believe I know correctly. So, what do I say? I say recognize there are different lanes. And I'm not telling you to stay in your own lane. That's not ever what I would say, but I would say don't discount somebody else's lane. That's their lane. That's what they do. Um, Recognize the strengths. All they have to say, and nobody can actually say this unless they're possessed by, if they're possessed by a devil, they cannot say this. And the Bible says that they can't say this. They cannot say that Jesus Christ is God Almighty. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit are one, 3 separate people. They cannot say that. They will not say that. They will not say that Jesus came, born of a virgin, died on a cross, and conquered death and rose on the 3rd day. They will not say that. They will not accept Jesus at face value, knowing that he is the author of all the lanes that we walk down. They cannot say those things and they will not accept him. They will bring something to the table as a reason why they will not accept him. So recognize that part of anyone when you look into their lane and how they're running. Listen to what they're saying. Steve Fletcher knows that Jesus Christ is God Almighty. End of discussion. That's it for me. That's enough. That's all I need to hear. Everything else he's doing is his lane that I don't understand, but he does. and he's presenting it to me, and I appreciate all the work he's done as he presents that stuff. So let's get into my lane here real quick and present this to those who understand these timelines. And there's a lot of them. I have 22,000 subscribers. There's a lot of people who understand these timelines. There's a lot of people who discount them and don't understand. But if the timeline's wrong, how do I keep coming up to the very important dates that we're looking up similarly to other people in their lanes? So just recall this. Jacob runs away from Esau. He is 77 years old. Excuse me. He is 77 years old when he runs from Esau. Jacob is 77 years old when he makes the deal with Laban. The time between when he ran away from Esau and the time that he makes the deal, I know for a fact there's 30 days in there where he worked for Esau. There's a 30-day gap where he worked for Laban. I know for a fact that's in there. How long did it take him to leave Esau and get to Laban to work for free for 30 days? I don't know. There's some math in there somewhere. It's in the Bible for a reason. We need to determine how long it took. So, in other words, Israel became 77 on May 14th of, what was it? 2025. On May 14th of 2025, Israel will become 77 years old. Then he works after all that stuff between his brother and the 30 days working and all the stuff that he did. Somebody said one of the four things I said he did actually occurred later. So I'm not 100% sure on that. Not my lane. But the fact is, Israel will turn 84 years old on May 13th, May 14th in the year 2032. Now, on my timeline, January the 25th is Shavat 11. Shavat is the 11th month. It is 11/11 on January 25th of 2026. I've got more math. Don't get worried. We're going home long before 2026. All right. But 1 year earlier than that happens here in a couple of days. 1 year earlier than that, before Israel turns, what did I say? 77, I believe. I didn't write it down here. We'll get to the timeline in a moment. But before Israel turns 77, what was it, 1948, 1950, 22, something that I have it on the timeline. At any rate, can't do quick math. So I noticed that it's 2,300 days from January 25th, 2026 to May 13th, 14th of 2032. It is exactly 2,300 days. Now, every number we find in the Bible is not speaking to the bride or to those who rule and reign with Christ, whatever terminology you'd like to use. They are not speaking. Just as a matter of fact, very few of those numerical verses are speaking to those who rule and reign with Christ. We're taken out of here before all this stuff goes down. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of stuff, but we ain't seen nothing yet. So let me continue. Just recall that January 25th is Shavat 11, which is 11/11. A lot of people are seeing that. That's in their lane. I've seen it too. All right. This came from a commenter. Oh, this came from a commenter, Neo. Very good comment. He pulled out of the Bible several different verses that indicate 7.5 years. 7.5 years. I keep seeing the 7.5 years. There's an extra 6 months for some reason. And so when I apply it to the timeline, that's March 16th. Perfectly, March 16th. But he pulls out all of these. David was 30 years old. In Hebron, reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. That's amazing that worked out that way. And then Solomon's temple The fourth year. Now, this was interesting. In the fourth year, the foundation of the house was laid in the month of Ziph, which is the second month, and in the 11th year. So we're looking at 7 years in the month of Bull, which is the eighth month, second, eight, 7.5 years again for the temple to be finished. When is the temple finished? We as those who rule and reign with Christ, look at ourselves as though we have accomplished something greater than anyone else, and that's simply not accurate. God loves the Jews. The Jews will be the only ones that will propagate the future of humanity. They will live in the garden. I'm sorry, they will live in the millennium for 1,000 years. They will be the only one having children. That lineage will be the only one to go forward into the new heaven and the new earth. We, who is the elect? An elect person is anyone that's not going to the lake of fire. Whether you be those who rule and reign with Christ, whether you be that great multitude that show up in seal 6, whether you be the Jew that goes to the millennium, all groups are called elect. We selfishly say they missed out on something, they did something wrong, they weren't good enough. They're just belonging to a different group. They ultimately, during the tribulation, will drop to their knees. I will imagine that billions of people of all faiths, Hindu, Hebrew, you name all the different religions, have heard about this rapture event and are scoffing at it until the moment it happens. And then they will drop to their knees and say, Jesus, this was all true. I didn't believe it, but now I'm seeing it. You were a doubting Thomas, but now you're actually involved with it and you see it. We say that the 7 year tribulation is for the Jew. During the 7 year tribulation, this planet will be decimated except for save one place on the planet. There will be one place on the planet that will not be decimated, and that's Israel. The United States is gone. Canada is gone. South America is gone. It's all decimated. It's all destroyed. That's why I'm beginning to think, and I said this so many times, I don't know how long after the rapture do we see seal 6, but it's almost appearing now. And if we say the Jews have to have 7 years of tribulation, those first 6 months, each month might be a seal. I don't know. And on the sixth seal, in the sixth month, it almost appears on the timeline now. None of this is thus saith the Lord. Don't hold me to that. But it is just math that is pointing to and lining up with things that we see in the Bible. So we'll continue on. All right, what is this? Okay, so I've been saying that March 16th looks like the date of the rapture, but January 25th started jumping up and out on the math, on the timeline. It just so happens that January 25th is 50 days prior to March 16th. Now, it could be said 40 days, it could be said 30 days. I mean, there's a lot of different math that could happen between here and here, but something keeps jumping up in relationship, and I showed you the 2,300 days in relationship to January 25th. It's just math. It's just math, and that's what keeps showing up. Nothing peculiar about it, just math. Now, this is the timeline that Sister Sandy built. Again, hours and hours she spent on this. I went to sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. I woke up at 11 o'clock in the morning, and that was her five. She's in New Zealand, so she's quite far away, and she builds these things for me. I don't ask her to. She just does it, and I really appreciate that she does it. This is amazing what she does. And then we spent just hours going back and forth math between dates and all of this stuff. So we narrowed it down to this timeline. Now, creation happened, and they've known this for generations, but as of late, to make the rapture date fit, or the end of the tribulation fit 2032, and the rapture date fit 2025, they've been moving the creation in order to make it fit, not taking into account this period of time from when Jesus was born all the way over to here to the Day of Atonement when Jesus was baptized and the Holy Spirit settled down in the form of a dove on him. Then I said, all right, if that's the date, then from there we count 2,000 years. Nothing down here fits when I did that. Nothing fits. That's actually how I started the timeline, was that year and 10 days that Noah spent on the ark. And I mean, this is a fact. They just moved it by 6 months. You still have to experience those 6 months. They still have to count, but it's what causes us to go from September to March. It's what causes the changeover from the head of the year being September to the changeover being in March. It happens in March. So when I calculate this time right here, if I don't calculate it, that means the rapture will not occur until September the 24th in 26 AD. You're looking at another year and a half or so before the rapture would occur. Now, if I did that, Apophis wouldn't fit. Apophis lands absolutely perfectly right here. Apophis lands absolutely perfectly on, how do you say, on, where did the date go? Hold on, I can't see. Oh, right smack in the center of, on April the 13th. It lands right smack in the middle of January the 25th of 2026 and what I think the end of tribulation is on September the 24th, 2032. So this equation has to be here. If it's not here, none of this down here works. It makes sense. It's biblical. He was up on the ark. And I've asked 100 times, why was Noah on the ark those extra 10 days? And without those 10 days, none of this will fit. All of this has to be taken into account. 1 year, 10 days, and 6 months exactly, which adds up to between 555 and 557, inclusive and exclusive. So I chose the middle ground and I chose this date. And it just so happens that when I did, September the 24th minus 556 days does land on the day of equal parts, March 16th, perfectly. Now, when I go forward from now, March 16th, instead of September the 24th, we went back 556 days, which added up to a year and 8 days. You come back, you start your new Jubilee cycle here. We have this 80-year Jubilee cycle. We notice this extra 14 days that happens between the time Jesus was born and the time creation began in 4004 BC, but the year changed over on September the 15th, which is the beginning of the Jubilee, and man was created on the 16th. So the 16th, technically, I started from. I could have started the 80-year Jubilee from anywhere. If I had started it back here on September the 11th, this would have been 80 Jubilees in 21 days. But as it sits, I like the 14 days the best because of the symmetry with it. You have 7 days after man was created, you have atonement, and you have 7 days prior to Jesus' birth on September 30th, you have atonement. So from atonement to atonement, we lose that 14 days. It's exactly 80 Jubilees from atonement to atonement. But I left them in there because they point directly at the birth of Christ and the birth of man, creation of man and the birth of Christ perfectly. Now, I start this up accounting for the 556 days and I go 40 Jubilees. Again, if I change that in any way, if I take those 556 days out, you won't be looking at a rapture until September 24th of the year 2026. I don't believe that's true. Just by virtue of what the Bible says is that man is supposed to be on the ground toiling. This time, it's almost like when Jesus was born, the universe took a collective gasp and it held itself. It held itself until, because God's walking around on earth totally vulnerable. He's human. He's not, he's God and man, it's true, but until that Holy Spirit settles down on him on the Day of Atonement in when did that happen? Right here. Until that happens, the Holy Spirit settles down on him. He doesn't, I don't want to say he doesn't have, he has not cured anyone. He has not done any miraculous things. He hasn't done anything. As a matter of fact, 3 days after this is when he turns water to wine. His mother knows that he now has the Holy Spirit in him. Um, I need somebody who has really researched that to help me understand that a little bit better, but it would appear during the period of time from when Jesus was born up until the dove settled down on him, the Holy Ghost entered into him. What's that period of time represent? Why is it taken out? We know it's taken out because if you don't take this out and you just keep on going, that would mean that a rapture would have to occur in 1997, and it didn't. So that period of time must be taken out. And so I just don't quite, and of course, we know it's 30 years. Jesus was 5 days before he was 30 years old, but the 556 days right here account for that time to bring it back to there. So, at any rate, the stuff I'm grappling with as I go forward with this, the last 2,000 years, the 40 Jubilees begin on March 16th, Nisan 1, and the last day of this Jubilee cycle will be from 25 AD to 2025 AD, March 16th, at sunset. It will be called Rosh Hashanah at sunset on March 16th. It'll become March 17th in the year 2025 AD. It's perfectly lines up. This is the end of this Jubilee and Shemitah cycle. As I'm working on this 6 years you shall work and 7 days you shall rest, it appears as though every 49 years you have to have a year of silence, a year of reset, because then the Jubilees will fall back by a year every 49 years, making no sense, only to realign every 350 years. So the Jubilee cycle and the Shemitah cycle, while the Shemitah cycle ends at 49 years, there's a whole year of silence, except for where we read in Leviticus 25, where the trumpet has to be blasted 6 months later. And then 6 months after that begins the new Jubilee and Shemitah cycle. And it continues on for 49 years. And then you have a quiet year, the great eighth year. We have the great eighth day. We have 7 days in a week, but then out of nowhere, we have this great eighth day. I think the same thing applies to the Shemitah cycle. We have the 49 Shemitah cycles, and we have the great eighth year, the eighth year of that Shemitah cycle, where it's silent except for what Leviticus says, where they shall blow a trumpet uh, in the seventh month and 10th day. Is it 10th day? I believe it's the seventh month and 10th day. They'll blow trumpet, heralding in the new Jubilee cycle, which will begin 6 months later. So, with all that being said, I said, okay, and I tried over here and I couldn't make it happen. There's no numerical value that allows me to say that the Jubilees overlap. I've been saying it for years. The Jubilees had to overlap. They had to overlap to account for the 7 years, but they didn't. They ended here. They restarted here. They went on for 40 Jubilees. And then 7 years later, we see the end of the tribulation on September the 24th of 2032, Tishri 10. Tishri 10, the 7th month and 10th day, Tishri 10 on the Day of Atonement. But when I said, well, that's weird. I mean, that's fine. But is there a second Jubilee cycle overlapping in there? And I went back 40 Jubilees, exactly 2,000 years, and I landed here on September the 24th, 32 AD. And I said, there had to have been an event that took place in 32 AD. What could have possibly happened in 32 AD? On September the 24th. And then I find that it had to be, this is referencing Paul on the Damascus Road. It had to be this date that Paul was blinded, or Saul, renamed Paul, was blinded on the Damascus Road. And from that moment forward, we come to the end of the tribulation. Then I said, all right, I've got the 1,260 days, but what about the 1,290 days? I went in, and again, if the math is accurate, it will fall accurately on the timeline. You don't have to push anything or make anything happen. It will fall. And all of this math down here will prove the separation between the Jubilees back here. So I said, well, let me go forward 30 days for the 1,290. I did, and that landed on October the 24th. This is the day that Noah went into the ark at sunset. October the 24th, Noah went into the ark at sunset. Then I said, all right, what about the 1335 days? Does that do anything? And I added 1335 to September the 24th, and I landed here on December the 8th, Hanukkah. It was a very high watch day for me because of the map on the other timeline, but I'd never seen it laid out like this before. I can't see this until I actually put all the numbers down. And I'm glad they're on this board right now and not dancing around in my head anymore. So December the 8th, 2032 is Kislev 24. I said, all right, if I'm going to go forward with 40 Jubilees, then I need to justify going back with 40 Jubilees. So from the date of the end of the tribulation, I should be able to go back 30 days and 75 days. And what I found when I did that, 30 days and 75 days back from the 1,260 days, right here, 1,260 days to Apophis. If I add another 30 days to it, then I would be on March 14th, and 75 days would put me on January the 28th, which is the Festival of Trees. So I thought that was pretty cool. But then I noticed as I was building the timeline that I had a sub timeline appearing as I worked on this. And the 2,300 days, I have the 1,260 days, I have the 1,290 days, and I have the 1,335 days mapped out. They make sense. They land on important days. But I have this issue with the 2,300 days. What do I do with it? So I had just decided I'm just going to apply that to um, the, the year that Israel became a nation. And I did. On May 14th, 2032, Israel becomes 84. Remember, Jacob flees from his brother. He works for 7 years for Rachel, winds up marrying Leah. He gives Leah her 7 days. 7 days later, he marries Rachel and he continues to work for another 7 years. Now, he was 84 years old when he got both Leah and Rachel. I am now beginning to believe that Leah and Rachel are representing I call them tribulation saints. They are the ones, the great multitude. We'll call them the great multitude. I'm beginning to think that Leah and Rachel are representing the great multitude, just like the 10 virgins. The five with oil and the five without oil, none of them are representative of those who rule and reign with Christ. And the reason is they all fell asleep. Only five had oil. Those are the tribulation saints. Five had no oil. Those are the Jews who are going to carry this thing out all the way to the end. Now, notice that on May 14th of 2032, it is still not September 24th of 2032. The verse where it says that he will shorten the days for the sake of the elect. The Jews are elect. Those who are going into the millennium are elect. Anybody who's not going into the lake of fire is an elect. So it is not a misunderstanding to recognize that when Israel turns 84 years old, that they are taken out of here prior, which that's May 14th, September. So when you do the math, May, June, July, August, September, that's 4 months before the harvest, I guess you could say. So now we're going to go to when Israel becomes a nation, that Jacob, now named Israel, is 84 years old. He gets both brides, gets them all. He gets the, he gets the, those who rule and reign with him back here. It goes on until May 14th. At some point, I think, where the tribulation begins right here, at some point in these 6 months or these 38 days, all the way up to October the 31st. Remember, it's October the 31st because Apophis hits here 1,200 days earlier than Apophis is October the 31st. And 1,260 days after is September the 24th, 2032, which matches back here to when Jesus, that was 26 AD, but the date matches to Jesus as well and 40 Jubilees. So we go on back here, the Day of Atonement, the day that the dove settled down on Jesus, right there, baptism. So when we count the 2,300 days from when Israel turns 84, we go back, we land right here on January the 25th of 2026. So I said, all right, when it comes to Israel, there is a different timeline going on. What does January 25th, 2026 have to do with anything as far as the Jews. And then I realized from October 7th, 2023, Shemini Atzeretz, when Israel's attacked, it is exactly 840 days until January 25th of 2026. Something is going to, and these relationships don't have anything to do with this up here. They're separate. This is a little sub timeline down here that began to develop. I didn't see it before. And again, January 25th, 2020, or January 25th of any year is Shavat 11. It's 11/11. I could go back. Well, I'll go back in a moment, but 840 days. There's that 84 again. 84 keeps jumping up nonstop. Anna, she was a widow for 84 years. Jesus was in the grave 3.5 days, 84 hours. Jesus' ministry was 3.5 years long. Jesus lived to be 33 and a half years old. Everything is perfect to something occurring in January 25th of 2025 to indicate something's going on. Now, I didn't do the math. Did I do? No, I didn't do the math to figure out from October 7th, 2023 to January 25th. I thought I did. I did, but I forgot to write it down. There was something that equaled out very nicely for January the 25th of 2025. I don't know what it was, but at any rate, you can see this sub timeline that begins to develop as I go through all of this. Here's what I think. Bottom line, with everything that I'm seeing with all these numbers, I believe that the rapture will occur on March 16th, but some huge event on January the 25th, here in 2 days, will reveal itself, indicating that we're on the right track. And then I think the great multitude will come out of tribulation at some point because God has to shift his attention back to Israel at some point in these 38 days. Between when the tribulation begins and the anniversary of the flood, and we see that 2300 days, which I believe applies to Israel, not to everyone else. Daniel's 70th week, um, I that's one thing I forgot to put up here is Daniel's stuff. Let's see. I don't recall where it's at, but if you'll read in Daniel, you'll see it written very clearly all of these things that will take place. That first of all, catastrophe will happen. And even in tumultuous times, they will build the temple. They will build this temple. I think they're going to have this temple built by October 31st of 2025. They're going to have this temple built here somewhere in this 7 month and 8 day period of time. 7 months and 8 days, this temple will be built because they have to begin sacrificing. Does it look like right now on the world scene that the temple is going to be built? No, it doesn't look like that at all. With everything we're seeing, it just does not look like the temple is going to be built. Something catastrophic has to happen to where everybody's like, okay, okay, Israel, build your temple. And it might be that this peace deal that we're looking at is not real. They know that these people are not going to abide by it. They know they're going to break it, which will give um, Trump an excuse to go in and just stomp the living daylights out of them to the point where they're like, yes, yes, go ahead and build your temple because Trump wants that temple built. Why do you think he moved the capital to Jerusalem? He wants that. He wants to be Cyrus. He wants to be the guy that builds that temple. So at any rate, um, somewhere in here, and then when we read in there, we also see that 1,260 days that these witnesses, now these guys are the two witnesses that these guys are going to be walking around calling fire down from heaven. So anybody that attempts to get close to Israel will be just destroyed instantly. They won't be able to do it. So the temple will be built, but 3.5 years in, right here, right around the time Apophis strikes, which is irony, right? That's irony. I usually don't take world events and put it on here, but that just fit too perfectly. But we see that the two witnesses are killed. 3.5 days, 84 hours, they will lie in the street. After 84 hours, they will rise up and go to heaven. At which point the Jews have to flee. They have to flee and go into Petra for how long? 1,260 days. So we see all of this happening 2300 days falls perfectly within this entire time frame of 2520 days. There's this 220 days of a period of time that's pulled out of it. So we again can look to that 6 months and see what's going on in there to see if, they build the temple, Satan goes in there, proclaim himself to be God, Apophis comes in, all kinds of stuff happens. And then we get into the bowl judgments, which is the worst of all of them. The seals are not cool. The trumpets, they're rough, but the bowls, they're something else. And we have 3 periods of 7 involved in there. So, and again, in seal 6, we will see the 7 trumpets. Seal 7, I'm sorry, once the seal 7 is broken, the 7 trumpets are now available. So no, they don't overlap. They run linear, and they don't share time. The 6 seals are first, and by the 6th seal, we clearly see that the great multitude appears, and the people in the 5th seal. And here's the thing: the people that are under the altar are back here. They come from back here. They would have come well from back here in the last 40 jubilees. They would have died and wound up under the altar. And they're asking by the 5th seal, "Hey, how much longer?" So it gives me an indication that they see us. The reason they become impatient is because they see us up there walking around in our new heavenly bodies with mansions and everything. And their time isn't yet. Their time won't be until the 6th seal when the great multitude shows up. I can't see the 6th seal being opened up over in here. It's going to be opened up somewhere. Um, after the anniversary. I'm sorry, after the anniversary of the flood, 1,260 days. I'm still working on all of this stuff. If any of you have any insight into this, please share it with me as far as math is concerned. And if you say, and it's okay to say, somebody said, no, the 6th seal runs all the way to the end. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It simply can't because the trumpets are revealed in the 7th seal. So that's simply not true. It almost appears as though, and just work with me here, 6th seal right to here, 7 trumpets right to here, 7 bowls right to here. It almost appears, and again, Israel's protected. They're on a separate timeline. They're in a separate. They're protected. The rest of the world's getting smashed, but they're not. They're protected by God because that's the lineage. That's the elect that will be pulled through all of that mess. So, if you see anything time wise, please send me a text. I will put a link to the Discord. You can go into the Discord and Sister Sandy's in there. You can ask her questions if that makes you feel more comfortable and discuss the dates here of when all this stuff happened. I have everything on here. Joshua enters Israel. He entered in the year 2598 from creation. That was the year 1406 BC. On top, we have from creation. On the bottom here, we have BC counting backwards from 0. Um, this becomes a little bit of a stickler because of that extra year, but I think I worked all the math out properly. 1406 is when Joshua enters. Noah's flood in 1656 from creation was 2348 BC. Abraham was actually born, and I was like, why was he born in 2003 BC when the 40-year Jubilee from creation ends in 2005 BC? Why is it 2 years off? It's 2 years off because if you did, God knew how we would do BC, which obviously is inaccurate because of the 0 year, but God knew. Abraham was born in 1948 from creation and died in 2123 post creation, leaving us with you put a 0 there with a 1 is 2023 as being when Israel was attacked, and that might even be referencing 1 year. Honestly, that might be referencing 1 year, giving us, I don't know, I don't like to do that kind of math, but it would bring us to January 25th of 2025. That 1 year, that might explain that. I don't know. So anyway, he was born in 2005 BC. He lived to 1830 BC. He was born 2 years prior to the Jubilee, and then of course we have Jesus over here, born September 30th, 3 BC, and by the time he's 2 years old, right around in here, Herod kills all the children. So there's a 2 year reason why the reason why Abraham was born 2 years before the end of the Jubilee is because it was type and shadow pointing us to this 2 years after Jesus was born that Herod was trying to kill the children. So there's a lot of stuff in here. You can look at, I did the math on the total number of years, including everything with all this gap and with this 7 years over here. The planet will have been here for 6,035 years and 8 days until the end of until the millennium starts. Then you add the millennium into that, and so we see this timeline. So again, you can go into my Discord and look at this timeline. It'll be in there. And I don't know. Sister Sandy probably didn't post this yet on her website. Did she put it here in the bottom? No, I wish she'd put her website on here. She needs to put her website down here, but it is www.endtimestudies.com, www.endtime-studies.com. I don't think she's posted this as of yet. It's too soon. Plus, she knows me. I will find 500 changes or 500 other dates to put onto this thing to continue this thing to the point where it looks like, I mean, where it looks like, let me go back here to where it looks like this. When I worked on this, I actually worked on it for a long time, and then she offered to do this for me, and I was actually super impressed. I didn't at first. I was like, yeah, I don't know. But then when I saw it laid out and she did this, I'm like, this is awesome. And so this is cool. She doesn't again. Her web page is not. I don't control it in any kind of way. She's independent, and she does not necessarily agree with anything that I put on a timeline. She just does this for everyone who builds a timeline. She has built timelines for so many different people. And if you go into her YouTube, you can see timelines from a lot of different people. She's very independent from any of us. And just apparently, this is her lane. She loves doing this work. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. So I would go back to this right over here. I noticed this a couple years ago. I can't change it. Um, this is Joshua's long day. I was trying to find that extra day. I never knew where to put it. Equal Symphony said February the 11th, but it turns out it's just 4 minutes a day I had to add to the first day, and it worked itself out perfectly. Clocks and dreams. A lot of people are seeing their clocks change over to 11:11. A lot of people are having dreams about 11:11. And when you come down here, it is Shavat 11. It is 6 months out from Av, and it is January the 25th. So, like I said, this holds some value here as to what we're about to see. And as we go forward, we have the Festival of Trees is actually January 28th. When I made this, I wasn't able to put it on the 6 days you shall work and 7 days you shall rest. So to be Shabbat, the Festival of Trees lands on January the 28th. And then as we go forward, we find where did it go? It's up here. I have to find where did it go? Well, it had to be, let's see, if season was March 30th, so it'd have to be February the 28th. I did something wrong. That's not Purim. I didn't see it. Purim is right there. Purim is on February the 28th. The Festival of Trees is on January the 28th. Okay. Yeah, I did the math wrong. 30 days after January the 28th would be February the 28th, and 30 days after February the 28th will be Nissan 14th, March 30th. So the high watch date will be the 25th, 11/11. It will be the 28th of January, Festival of Trees, which isn't really a high watch day, and then Purim, which is 30 days before the cross, before Passover. Purim also happens to be 11 months and 11 days from the head of the year. People get confused by this. This is the 11th month and 11 days, 11th day. It is the 11th month of Shabbat and 11 days in. But this is 10 months and 11 days from the head of the year because we haven't completed the 11th month yet. We're in the 11th month, we haven't completed it yet, so you can't count it. Same thing here. This is December, let's say. It's if you're in December, you've completed 11 months, and whatever day you are in December is how many days in plus 11 months. So 11 months and 11 days would be Purim, and that is February the 28th, Adar 14. And we will see that would be a high watch date, and this will be a high watch date. It always is every year for me, but this year I built that 6,000 years, and it seems to make sense. So we have these two events, which are 33 days apart. No, 30, is that? I don't recall, 36 days apart, 35 days apart. So um, we'll be looking at that as well. All right, let me stop sharing, taking up enough time. If anybody has any information through that end, let me know. Go to a quiet place by yourself. Nobody needs to know, and you don't need to tell anybody. With all the information that I personally keep seeing coming out for timelines, we are out of time. Um, I never wanted to build a 6,000 year timeline. It was just too much for all those numbers to rattle around in my head. And I have a problem with numbers. I have to write them down to see their similarities in distances and time. And I did. So there we have the timeline. And but I'm glad I did now because I could never figure out what year it was. Are we going to go into 2026, 2027, 20? I keep hearing people going, it's not going to happen for another 5 years because of this, and this. Well, now I have a timeline that says it's going to happen in 2025, and we are out of time. And we literally have 50 days from January the 25th to March 16th. And we'll see if a huge event happens on January 25th or not. We will see. All right. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will be back as I continue to add to this timeline. I will be back to bring you up to date with what I find.